Hi, everyone. I hope you're doing okay and staying sane. But if you're not, please call the pastoral care team or your minister because we're here to help. And even though we're separated physically, we're still together as a congregation. So we begin our service. Our opening words are from Rumi, a 13th century Persian Muslim poet, jurist, Islamic scholar, theologian, and Sufi mystic. Your task is not to seek for love, but merely to seek and find all the barriers within yourself that you have built up against it.
Good morning, all. It's a pleasure to be with you again. I have to tell you something that I have hurt my hand last week. As you can see, it's all bandaged up. The good news is that the healing is progressing nicely, but I'm not going to be able to use it on the piano today, so I'll only be playing with my right hand today, and we're not going to sing any hymns except for Spirit of Life, and there will be no postlude, but I will be playing some interlude music starting now, right hand only.
The living tradition that we Unitarian Universalists share draws from many sources. Today we highlight the first source and the third one. Direct experience of that transcending mystery and wonder, affirmed in all cultures, which moves us to a renewal of the spirit and an openness to the forces that create and uphold life. Wisdom from the world's religions, which inspire us in our ethical and spiritual life. For our joys and sorrows this morning, a number of them came through. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop a stone for everyone in the bowl of water, and then I'll return. Our first is A Joy and a Sorrow. It's from Abigail and Chris Drescher. Chris and I have a joy and sorrow. The joy is that we will be going into the hospital on Monday morning to have our baby. But our sorrow is that our birth plans have been changed dramatically to COVID-19. Please keep us in your prayers and thoughts. And Chris and Abigail, we hold you close in our hearts. From Marcia Frank, our joy is we're enjoying cooking at home. We used to eat out a lot. I'm thankful for my daughter who cares enough to bring us fresh fruit and vegetables. That's nice. From Alan George, my daughter Sheila is finally starting to recover from her hip surgery 6 weeks ago in Boston. My sorrow is my cousin Anselm passed away Friday morning in New York City. Alan, we're so sorry. From Lynn Dennison, after 6 years of part-time post-retirement work at AU Libraries, I have resigned as of April 10. It is bittersweet since I enjoyed my colleagues and my work very much, but it is time. From Jerry Goldman, please keep my friend Stuart Stein in your thoughts and prayers as he recovers from COVID-19 in Roslyn, New York. Jerry, we hold you in our hearts. From Dee Medley, Sharon Beecher, a beloved member of the River Nymphs, my tribe, has left the planet. She was a good UU, a great jewelry designer, and an enthusiastic supporter of the mountain, Susie, and swim. She will be sorely missed. From Amanda Main, my joy is that I was finally able to attend last Sunday's service at 1 a.m. Thursday before I went to sleep. The stresses and uncertainties of the global crisis had started to get to me that day. My sorrow is that 2 of my 3 siblings are unable to work right now and are waiting on financial assistance from the government. One lives in Asheville, North Carolina, the other in Las Vegas, Nevada. My other sibling in Atlanta has had his hourly pay reduced. Cassandra Harris, a joy in that I can't physically touch my children and grandchildren, I video conference them every day. Sorrow for those who suffer from depression, severe anxiety, and other debilitating mental illnesses at this time. One of my former students, knowing of my medical knowledge and understanding, has called me daily to explain to her what is going on. She suffers from severe anxiety, depression, and OCD. She lives alone. And for all the joys and sorrows unspoken, and for all the joys and sorrows we don't know about in our congregation and in the world, and we drop our last stone for all of us, that we truly are on this planet together and one. I wish we could have learned that lesson an easier way. Whatever we can do, great or small, the efforts of all of us are needed to do the good work of this congregation. The offering will now be received, and there will be a PayPal site that will be on while the offertory. And remember, please remember, if you can, to pledge, because we're still going. We're still a congregation. I invite you into a moment of meditation to be followed by silence. I warn you that the meditation is a bit long, and it's a Sufi parable, and the Sufis are the mystics of Islam, and I'll have more to say about that later. A stream from far-off mountains passing through every kind and description of countryside at last reached the sands of the desert. Just as it had crossed over every other barrier, the stream tried to cross this one, but found out as fast as it ran into the sand, its waters disappeared. It was convinced, however, that its destiny was to cross this desert, and yet there was no way. Now a hidden voice, coming from the desert itself, whispered, "The wind crosses the desert, and so can the stream." The stream objected that it would only get absorbed, that the wind could fly, and this is why it could cross the desert. By moving as you usually do, you cannot get across. You will either disappear or become a marsh. You must allow the wind to carry you over to your destination. But how could this happen? By allowing yourself to be absorbed in the wind. This idea was not acceptable to the stream. After all, it had never been absorbed before. It did not want to lose its individuality. And once having lost it, how was one to know that it could ever be regained? The wind, said the sand, performs this function. It takes up water, carries it over the desert, and then lets it fall again. Falling as rain, the water again becomes a river. How can I know that is true? It is so, and if you do not believe it, you cannot become more than mud, and even that could take many, many years. And it certainly is not the same as a stream. But can I not remain the same stream that I am today? You cannot in either case remain so, the whisper said. Your essential part is carried away and forms a stream again. Do you even know which part of you is the essential one? When the stream heard this, certain echoes began to arise in his thoughts. Dimly, the stream remembered a state in which, or some part of it, had been held in the arms of a wind. It also remembered, or did it, that this was the real thing, not necessarily the obvious thing to do. And the stream raised its vapor into the welcoming arms of the wind, which gently and easily took it upwards and along, letting it fall softly as soon as they reached a mountain many, many miles away. And because it had had doubts, the stream was able to remember and record more strongly in its mind the details of the experience. The stream reflected, yes, now I have learned my true identity. Thank you, David. I'm going to ramble a bit before I get into the sermon. For those of you that don't know, I actually majored in comparative religion, and a friend and professor had 5 of us come over to India to stay with him for 2 months. And I'd like to open the sermon by sharing what Bruce Lawrence, the professor, wrote in, well, he had us keep a journal. And this is what he wrote in my journal in the airport in New Delhi before we flew out in January of 1975. Don, you learned to pray in India at a Muslim shrine, Deva Sharif. I didn't plan it that way. You didn't expect it that way, but it happened. Remember that religion which lives is life itself, whatever the label or the place or the excuse. I think I'd like to share too. I was in my backyard when the plane hit the Pentagon and was serving a church in the Washington, D.C. area all through 9/11, which gave Jan and I some interesting experiences because she had lived in the Middle East, even had Arab boyfriends and stuff, and we were a little bit of the odd ducks out. Anyway, in the post-9/11 era, Americans often see Islam as an Arabic religion. 90% of the population in Indonesia is Muslim. Pakistan has the second largest Islamic population, third is Bangladesh, and fourth is India. Islam is often equated with terrorism. This is wholly inaccurate. It's like saying that all Christians want to go to abortion clinics and murder doctors. Actually, this major religion rests on the 5 pillars of Islam. This is as good a starting point if one wishes to understand an accurate depiction of this major world religion. The Arabic word Islam simply means submission. It is derived from a word meaning peace. In a religious context, it means complete submission to the will of God. I want to interpose here too is the Aramaic traditions. Actually, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam are all connected. They're all the religion of Abraham. The Quran, the Muslim scripture, believed to be the recorded revelations of God to Muhammad, briefly describes the 5 pillars of faith. After Muhammad's death in 1632, his followers eventually sit down and expanded a more developed version. The first pillar of Islam is to utter these words: there is no God but God, and Muhammad is the messenger of God. The Arabic proper name for God is Allah. The word Allah refers to the same God as the God of the Jews and the Christians. The first statement is an affirmation of monotheism. There is no God but God. The second statement distinguishes Muslims. Muhammad is the messenger of God. Now, although Muhammad is the messenger and final seal of God's revelations, Muslims believe Muhammad to be a mere human being. To become a Muslim, it is only necessary to say these words with sincere conviction: there is no God but God, and Muhammad is the messenger of God. And I should interject here, I've chosen to do this sermon simply, so if you're looking for a complex presentation of Islam, I thought it was better to go the other route for people. So there you have it. The second pillar of Islam is the prayer Muslims perform 5 times each day. Let that sink in. 5 times each day. Thus, the prayer practice binds the Islamic community together and across the ages and across the globe. The leader's actions serve as the pattern for the series of standings, bowings, prostrations, and sittings that make up the prayer practice. All eyes are directed straight ahead, with the entire congregation facing the direction of Mecca. Daily prayer is at dawn, at noon, mid-afternoon, sunset, and evening. Muslims gather in mosque for weekly worship in the early afternoon on Fridays. This practice arose because Friday was the weekly market day in the time of Muhammad. People from the surrounding area were available to attend services. Large mosques have 3 religious leaders: the leader of the prayer, the preacher who delivers a Friday sermon, and the person who calls the people to prayer. Smaller congregations combine these roles into 1 or 2 persons. Here's another edition of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. Islam is the most democratic religion. There are no priests, no ministers, no rabbis. Only Sufi and traditional So these roles. Traditional Muslims frown on any use of music in religious rituals. Only Sufi Muslims, the mystics, have developed rituals involving singing, musical instruments, and dance. All Muslims, however, share the daily prayer practice. It is a part of their spiritual discipline. And you may know a little bit about the Sufi dervishes. They not only sing, but they dance very well. But having known Orthodox Muslims, they really do frown upon that, and it's a friction inherent in the tradition. The third pillar of Islam is the religious obligation to give money to support the poor, the debtor, and the stranger. This is not considered optional charity. It is an obligation to serve God. To give money to the less fortunate is to worship God. In Muhammad's lifetime, this developed into an Islamic welfare system in which those with more income shared with those who did not have enough. In the Islamic world today, modern secular states have replaced the traditional sharing of wealth with taxation and welfare systems. The fourth pillar of Islam is the fast. During Ramadan, which will happen later this month, from dawn until dark, Muslims may not eat, drink, take medicine, or engage in sex. The list continues. No indecent talk or gossip or slander and anything else that would cause anger or grief to anyone. In the evening, Muslims can eat and enjoy marital relations. Before dawn, you can eat a meal for the day. The rules of Ramadan excuse the ill, children, and the aged from the fast. Muslims borrow the idea of a fast from the Jewish tradition of a fast on the Day of Atonement. The fifth and last pillar of Islam is the great pilgrimage to Mecca. This is the only pillar that is not absolutely required. Muslims should travel to Mecca only if they are physically able and can afford it. In recent times, over 2 million Muslims make the pilgrimage to Mecca each year. Each pilgrim dons a white, seamless garment to hide any differences in status and wealth. Pilgrims experience the thrill of seeing, hearing, and meeting fellow believers of all races and languages and cultures. According to the Islamic tradition, Mecca is where Adam and Eve lived and where Abraham and his son Ishmael built the first house of worship. It is also where Muhammad often prayed. The essence of this major world religion is contained in the 5 pillars of Islam. Let's review them. The first is sincerely to say these words: there is no God but God, and Muhammad is the messenger of God. Second is to pray 5 times each day. Third is the religious obligation of giving money for the support of the poor, the debtor, the stranger. Fourth is the obligation to fast during Ramadan. And fifth is the religious obligation to make a pilgrimage to Mecca. Together, the 5 pillars form a spiritual discipline. That's my very simplistic summation of Islam, and I hope it's helpful because I know there's a lot of misgivings and misinformation about this faith, and it's easy to understand why, at least in America. But I'd like to leave you with the poet Kabir, a 15th century Indian, son of a Muslim weaver. Inside this clay jug, there are canyons and pine mountains, and the maker of canyons and pine mountains. All 7 oceans are inside, and hundreds of millions of stars. The acid that tests gold is there, and the one who judges jewels. And the music from the strings no one touches, and the source of all water. If you want to know the truth, I will tell you the truth. Friend, listen. The God who I love is inside. Thank you, David. It's beautiful. The music was beautiful today. Our closing words come from Rumi. And if you don't know Rumi, I would encourage you to look him up. He's well worth the effort. I am water. I am the thorn that catches someone's clothing. There's nothing to believe. Only when I quit believing in myself did I come into this beauty. Day and night I guarded the pearl of my soul. Now in this ocean of purling currents, I've lost track of which was mine. Stay well. Stay well, everyone, and take care of each other. And remember, we're all just an electronic or phone call away. And don't ever forget that, because we're here for each other. Okay, that's it.